In relation to I suppose the question that was asked, the one thing that we mustn't forget, and Siobhan mentioned this, is the context behind the events that both were part of the video and that Mary and Siobhan have outlined. And that's, ongoing and growing economic inequality, stagnant wages for some sectors, the fallacy of trickle-down economics that drove policy for years. We're seeing an accumulation of capital among certain groups, and groups of people are being left behind. Other groups of people feel left behind. And then what you have now is, as Siobhan outlined, changes in the role of influences. And those people who often are most impacted by decisions actually have the least influence in how those decisions are made. And that is what's driving the change at the moment. And the community and voluntary sector has consistently worked on behalf of communities for years, and I would argue strongly that in order to generate the changes that these communities need, then advocacy is vital. You need advocacy to change policy, and in order to advocate, you have to engage with the political system and engage with policymakers. And it's really important that the sector doesn't exist in an echo chamber. We have to engage with people who challenge our views. We have to engage with those people who influence power, who control funding. And we also have to understand the context in which they're making decisions, the broader context that they're facing. So that includes things like the technological impact on employment, demographic change. At a national level, the funding pressures we face due to years of underinvestment. So you've things like housing, education, healthcare, childcare, public transport. There's climate change as well as one of the huge challenges we face. And then the dominant narrative that exists at the moment, which is very difficult to challenge. And this dominant narrative is that, at one level, there is absolutely no appetite to raise revenues to provide resources to actually address the problems that this country faces and that many communities in this country face. So that's the broader context in which the sector must advocate. So, I think there's huge possibilities for the sector, but in order to be effective, especially in the post-truth age, we need evidence-based advocacy. So we need the evidence to highlight the causes of the problems, to show what the solutions are, and to be honest about the cost of those solutions. They're not easy and they're not cheap, and we need to be honest with ourselves, with the communities we serve, and with those policymakers and politicians that we're engaging with, that we need increased resources, and this requires increased revenue. There's no two ways about it. And it's going to take a long time. There aren't that many short-term wins here. We need to take a long-term perspective on this, and that's challenging for the sector because it means you have to consistently keep the focus on the causes of the problems, on the need for long-term solutions. So in order to, guide the sector's sort of negotiating both within itself and with policymakers and with the political system, the compromises that will have to be made, the prioritization that will have to take place, we can't address every issue at once, then I think evidence is vital, both to retain trust, to maintain trust within the broader public and also within the communities that we serve. There are challenges that the sector faces at the moment. These are the changing political contexts, the focus on constantly demonstrating value and effectiveness, which is important, but at times having to demonstrate value and effectiveness can actually take away from addressing the causes of the problems that we have. Then you have the challenge that both Mary and Siobhan spoke about, is the common good is being pitted against individual rights and individualism. And that's a real challenge for the sector because a lot of the things that the sector is advocating for are for the benefit for everybody, the benefit for all. There's a changing funding and compliance context as well, which is constantly fluctuating that we have to exist in. And then there's perception and public opinion, which can change and which can be influenced by both fake news and other news. But there are lots of things that the sector can do, and I would be quite positive about this, that the first thing the sector has to do is to understand the values that are driving decision making and who's articulating them. Then who is challenging those values? So who will be your allies in this? then how do you challenge the values? And look back, look at what policies and decisions did work, not just in Ireland, but in other countries in the past, and what values underpin those decisions, and where do we have to get back to? And the one thing the sector has to do is to keep a long-term focus on the causes of the problems that are driving, this growing uncertainty, because to make something a core political objective, beyond one term of office requires consistent effort, and that's not easy, but I do believe the sector is in a position to continue to advocate for the communities that it serves.